Hey, today we're doing a repair on an old Merc. It's a 1985 280 SE, and basically what's happening, he's got a low fluid. The owner was complaining that it's got funny shifts, which is basically attributed to not having enough fluid in there. But there are no oil leaks underneath apparently. Once it gets to, if it's leaking on a seal, once the oil level gets to that seal level, it's not going to leak anymore anyway. But on these, the issue probably is related to the vacuum modulator. It's probably leaking and sucking oil out of the transmission and out your exhaust pipe, or through the inlet manifold and out your exhaust. And you can see he's done 650,000 in this particular vehicle. Make the job a little bit less messy, we're just going to suck a bit of oil out of the filler tube there. Now, to identify these transmissions, you'll find there's a number there on the side. 722.300, and that's how you identify this transmission. And here we've got the vacuum modulator. You can see the colour of it, green. These ones came out with a red one and a green one, so you want to make sure you get the correct one for the transmission. And you can see there's a little bit of oil leaking there as well somewhere. Good idea to also just double check that vacuum line, make sure it hasn't rubbed through somewhere, and at the end hoses are nice and pliable and sealing properly. Anyway, we're going to just blow out around that pan. Given it a bit of a wash, pressure wash, was pretty dirty. Okay, pan's off. The oil is pretty clean in it, but that probably is due to them topping it up constantly. The filter here, it's got 3 Phillips head bolts. One over here, 1, 2, and 1 over here. And that's basically the service, just changing the oil filter. And we're going to pop this vacuum modulator out and just have a look what's going on there. Now, to get the modulator off, there are 2 little brackets that you need to undo, one on either side of the modulator. The other one's a little bit hard to see, just under there, see it? 5mm Allen key head, and there's just like a little bracket that goes into a slot on the modulator. Just make sure you clean it all as best as you can before you pull it out as well. Now we just give it a bit of a wriggle, and there you go. Now you can see, no matter how well you clean it, there'll still be that road dirt there. So now you've got to be careful not to get any of that muck in that little port there. Okay, I've got the old modulator there, and you'll actually find, even if you can see that's been leaking. So the oil would have been sucked through there, or out of the transmission, through your inlet manifold and out the exhaust. Another way you can check it is just put the hose on and just suck through the pipe, put your tongue on there, and that should hold. There's a new one there, and that's a genuine unit, Mercedes. They do look a little bit different, and they are colour coded. Apparently this has been, or this one's been superseded by this type of modulator. But they do have red, black, blue, clear, there's metal type, all sorts, so you want to make sure you get the right one. Now there are a couple of ways to adjust these modulators. One is by just having a little plug there and just pushing one against the other, just to get the spring tension about the same on both. And another way is to actually put a gauge on the modulating port and adjust it that way. You have the vacuum disconnected from the modulator, jack your back wheels up, drive it 50 kilometers an hour and adjust the pressure in there like that. The little adjuster on the modulator is actually this little T-bit here, and that slots into there, and it can just be, you just either tighten it, make the spring stronger, or back it off, make it weaker, and then there's a little locating plug that you put on there. But what I like to do is try and get it back to the original, so I'll just push them up against each other like this, and just see, adjust it roughly. You can see the new one is a lot stronger. The other one's a lot weaker, so even to start with, I'll be backing that one off just to try and get that spring tension in the modulator about the same. And then the road test, I'll just try it before I put any pressure gauges or anything on it, and then you might have to just tweak it a little bit. And here I've got the 7223 7224 ATSG manual, and you can see there's a diagram of the modulator. It shows what the numbers, the little adjusting key, the rubber cap, the vacuum connector, O-ring. And the idea is, there you go, two versions of the diaphragm. You want to make sure you have the same one. Testing the pressure values, important. Has 3 test connections. You've got this one over here, which is the governor, which is at the front of the front left side of the transmission. We're interested in number 1, which is the modulator or the vacuum control unit pressure, number M. 1 is the modulator and M. So just to the rear of the modulator, the little port there, is what you want to be connecting your pressure gauge to if you're going to adjust it that way. And there's the description of how you adjust it. You've got to be doing 50 kilometers an hour. The vacuum line has to be disconnected, so not working the modulator valve. And then we adjust the pressure. The modulating pressure there and the governor pressure, you hook up a couple of pressure gauges there, disconnect your vacuum line, drive the vehicle 50 kilometers an hour. Some people do it on the hoist. They just jack up the back wheels. You can get it pretty close like that, but you still need to have the load on the transmission to do it properly. So even after you adjust it on the hoist, you'll still have to possibly just tweak it, just take it for a test run, and you might have to readjust it. And the adjustment screw, or that little T adjuster on the vacuum modulator, can be adjusted. One full rotation, it changes the pressure of 0.4 bar. After you finish adjusting everything, then you basically push that cap on, and that locates that adjuster so it can't pop out. And here we've got the diagram of your little modulator there, and the little the pressure port there. And here we've got a little bit more information there. And this is the important one here, the speed of measuring the governor pressure and adjusting it to 0.5 of a bar. But basically what you do is you still need to have those shift points to what's indicated on your speedo or driver comfort. Okay, I've got it back in. One thing I forgot to mention, you can stick that little plastic valve on the modulator with a bit of Vaseline. The oil, as it warms up, will just dissolve it anyway, so it won't affect anything. And another thing is, I actually, from the factory settings of this new modulator, to get it even with the original old one, I had to back it off 2.5 turns. Make sure you mark that little T with a bit of liquid paper or texture on one end so you can see exactly where it is. And another little trick is these 5mm bolts. Just to get them started, you can use a little T30 socket. They fit perfectly in a 5mm Allen key hole. Don't tighten them with the Torx, but yeah, you can just get it started. And also just make sure that that bracket isn't in the wrong slot. I think that you can possibly, I don't know how you do it, but I've heard of people damaging this, bolting it up, especially if they're doing it on the ground and access is hard, and they end up breaking the modulator. I'm just going to take the little T adjuster out while I test drive it. Just going to whack the transmission back together, put a new filter in, put the pan back on, and then we can refill it and take for a test run. And just quickly, you can see we've got the 4-bolt pan rubber seal and the 6-bolt one. They are slightly different, but the filters are the same. Now these filters on these, they actually have a gasket instead of an O-ring, but just make sure that the gaskets are there. Sometimes if they've been sitting for a few years or whatever, the gaskets will actually come away or become chipped, or the glue will come off. Good idea to clean any road dirt off the pan rail there. If you're using a scraper, again, be careful not to damage it or the seal won't seal properly. Pan's nice and clean, and we use a high pressure washer to wash them off, make sure it's all nice and dry. And I'm going to add a little neodymium magnet to it. These didn't come out with magnets, but the better filtering system you have, the better it will be for the transmission. I actually call these magnets a magnetic filter. And also these rubber seals, you just want to make sure those little clips are hanging over the pan there properly as well. Good idea to always put all the bolts in before you tighten it up, especially on these. That one there, if it's sitting up against that little step, it's not going to go up properly. And you just do them up flush. The rubber's actually the tension in the rubber's the thing that's sealing there. I'm not going to put the little cap on until I take it for a test run and just make sure it's shifting like I like it. And when we're finished, we'll just put the cap back in. And we're just putting in about 4.5 litres of Dextron 3. You can put the synthetic fluid in it, but back in the old days they actually used the Dextron 2, I believe, in these. So Dextron 3 is the upgraded version. And good idea to check the oil level with the motor running and at operating temperature. Make sure it's warmed up because the oil will expand. And also I'm just going to check the vacuum line at the top of the manifold there. Just make sure that the rubbers and that aren't perished, and that because it was sucking oil out of the transmission, it may have carboned up the little orifice. And we just follow the vacuum line that's coming from the transmission and find where that's plugging into the manifold there. Just make sure that that's all good. Set them down there. Now all the shift points are okay, but I found that the cable's probably adjusted up. The pressure cable's too tight. So what's happening when you're pulling up to a stop, there's a big clunk or a bit of a clunk as you're stopping, and also the shifts aren't really characteristic to a Merc, they're a bit harsh. So if you have a look here, there's that little rod there, and there's a little slider there that you adjust that pressure cable. A little bit hard to see. There's a little cable there where my finger is. Yep. You're just going to adjust, press it right down to the floor, and we'll see how tight that cable is. That's tight out. Let it go a little bit. So how much did you let it go? Yep, so it's adjusted up too tight. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to loosen that little slider adjuster nut. It's right under this hose here. Just there, you can see it. And I'm just going to loosen that cable just so it's not so tight. And then we'll take it for another test run. You might have to do it a few times. And also just make sure all the little bushes, the little plastic bushes and the grommets and everything are all intact. They're not worn out or anything like that, because it's going to be hard to adjust if they're worn out. And also that all the little bolts on the brackets are tight. But this is definitely too tight. And I've just, before I've done any adjustments, I've just marked it with some liquid paper, just so I've got a reference point of where it was originally. If you don't mark it, then you're sort of adjusting blindly. So we know now where the reference point was, or where it was, and then we can just sort of back it off a little bit. And you can see I've loosened it probably about, about 3 mil, and they've tightened the lock nut like a wheel nut, and I'll just tighten that up there and try it again. So I don't know if you can see that. Camera won't focus. Where is it? Just see where the screwdriver is. You can see I've moved it from there to there. The liquid paper did go a little bit under that bracket, but you can see where the end of it was right there. So I've moved it that much, which is probably about 3 mil. Yeah, press the accelerator right down. And we'll just see. And there's a little bit of, it's not as tight now. And because of that ratio, that rod, there's a little short arm there and a longer arm here. The ratio of it, 3 mil here will probably be, I don't know, 5 mil or 7 mil over here. So just do a little bit at a time. And if you have to keep notes, just see how it feels at different intervals. But that's all the way down, and there's a little bit of movement there. So it's definitely looser. Okay, now I've got the shift pattern okay. It's shifting through the gears okay. I had to back it off a little bit more. And now I've just got to work with that harshness. Sometimes you've got to adjust that pressure cable and the modulator to get like a balancing point. So it does take a little bit, but be patient and make sure you take reference points of where you've put what. Otherwise you're going to get very confused. There we go. In the end, I had to back this off to get it the same as the original one. Back it off 2.5 turns, and then we've backed it off basically another 2.5 turns to get it to shift nicely there. So basically this one, the modulator adjustment, backing it off makes it shift a bit softer. Going clockwise makes it shift harder. And also the cable, with that adjustment, that'll generally adjust the whole shift pattern, whether it's shifting in the top gear at a lower speed or a higher speed. But the modulator, when you're tightening it up, will affect that a little bit as well. So they sort of, you need to adjust them together to get it right. And now basically, now that we've finished the adjustment there, we put the little T in there, and we put the locking cap back on. We clip that on. Putting these in, these little clips here will just locate into those little slots there, and those little ribs in there will lock, depending on where it is. So on this one, you can just push it on and just sort of rotate it a bit until it finds its way, and then you just push it on, clip it in, and there we go, it's all done. You can now adjust that. You can see that's gone all the way forward. You can adjust it a little bit if you choose to as well. Anyway, I hope that's helped. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Any questions in the comments. Thank you for watching.